right, ladies and gentlemen, all of our guests here on the Fan Show are all-stars, and I mean that in every sense of the word, which is why our special guest segments are brought to you by All-Star Bass Fishing. They are changing the bass fishing world in a competitive way, so check out their website, allstarbassfishing.com, and give them a like on Facebook, and make sure you make this weekend an All-Star weekend. He's back for another round, one of my favorite Bostonians, a Full Sail alum and a marketing guru. It is Joe Zollo. Joe, welcome back. How you doing, man?
Good, Richard. I'm doing well. I'm gonna have to check out that all. I don't fish, but I'll have to check it out and maybe get some of my girlfriend's family members some Christmas gifts. Those sound awesome.
They're mixing it up. I love it. So we have a pretty solid relationship. But anyway, we're here to talk about football as we are over the 3/4 of the waypoint, and now there's a lot to unpack. Really, I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, wow, you and I we connected just before the career fair. And I said, there's a lot of stuff I'd like to talk to Joe about. Specifically, the back and forth we seem to constantly see with Brady and Belichick and then Cam Newton in the mix. My first question to you would be, is New England going to make the playoffs this year?
I don't think so. At this point, you're looking at they're not going to win the division. The only hope they had of winning the division, in my opinion, was beating Buffalo 2 weeks ago. And Buffalo did lose in Arizona. Obviously, a fantastic play by Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. It helps them, but it's an NFC loss for the Bills. If they're going to lose a game, it should be out of conference. So I'm not worried about the Bills. I think they win the division. Miami looks really good with Tua at quarterback, and their defense has been great. Obviously, the Jets are just playing for the number one draft pick at this point. It's very obvious. They're going to need to sneak in at that seventh added wild card spot this year. And just looking at other teams across the conference specifically, I mean, looking at the AFC South, Indianapolis and Tennessee have a tight race for that division. So that's one wild card spot taken away. Miami's ahead of them in the wild card race. The Raiders have looked somewhat good this year, so the Raiders could vie for a playoff spot. Then you have the Steelers and the Ravens. So it's a very slim race and slim potential for them to make it. I'd probably put it at 10%. They need to rattle off about 3 or 4 straight to have a good chance, and they need some help along the way.
So I guess the more loaded question then is, why is this Patriots team so different? And what I mean by that is, we've seen Belichick without Brady before, and it hasn't been a problem. Matt Castle, 11-5, the first ever 11-win team to miss the playoffs. And then when there was that 4-game suspension, it was 3-1 with Garoppolo and Brissett. I mean, you changed it up twice. I'm missing something, and I know that Cam had COVID, and there was some quick audible, I guess, if you want to call it that, at the quarterback position, but I'm not seeing an identity with this New England team, and I feel like you probably are seeing that as well, or I guess not seeing it. What's your take on what makes the 2020 New England Patriots so different?
So the big thing to start the year was and this is not an excuse by any means, is the amount of holdouts they had. Donta Hightower, Patrick Chung, those guys obviously holding out for health reasons this season. So that definitely set them back. Not bringing in Cam Newton until like 2 months before the season, I think, also killed. And at that same time, no off season. You're changing your entire offense realistically, because Cam's not going to run the same offense Brady would run. Cam is not a pocket passer. He's a mobile guy. You want to get him utilized in the run game and try and get him out of the pocket as well. You want to play to his strengths. I think something that is really making me mad as a fan and someone who understands the game a little deeper is the play calling and the utilization of some of our weapons. We obviously don't have great wide receivers. That's no secret to anybody in this world. I love Damiere Byrd. He's a great compliment, but he's not a one. He's not a number one outside guy. Jacoby Myers has looked great, but I don't know if this is a flash in the pan or he's going to continue the success because he had drop problems last year. N'Keal Harry hasn't panned out yet. I'm not ready to give him the boot just yet because he's a first-round pick, but patience slowly wearing thin with him. James White is just not being utilized in this offense. And I think a big part of their identity has been James White and Julian Edelman. And with no Edelman, obviously, on IR, that's kind of left it to James White, but he hasn't been utilized whatsoever. So not so much on Bill, but a lot more on Josh Daniels and his play calling. The defense hasn't looked great either. Again, big names left the team this year. So that's definitely playing a factor. But you got to remember, too, there's no defensive coordinator for the Patriots. It's Bill Belichick who's really running the defense. And everyone says, oh, well, Bill ran it. Like when Patricia was there and when other guys were there. Yeah, of course he ran it, but he didn't have to focus too much on it. That's the thing is if you're a head coach, that's why we see all the time a coordinator goes from coordinator to head coach and they go 3-13 and they're fired the next season. It's because going from coordinator to head coach is a giant jump. Bill, we already know he can handle both sides of the football. He can handle a locker room. But the issue is when he puts so much weight on defense, then, there's points where he can't get together with McDaniels and talk strategy, or can't get together with Cam Newton because he got together with Tom Brady to talk a lot about strategy and all these different things. So, in short, coaching has really been a big issue, in my opinion, for what has really hindered them, which is weird for me to say at this point because before the season you were like, oh, they're not going to have an issue. It's Bill Belichick. He'll adjust no matter what. And clearly, we've seen it this year. Even the greatest of all time hasn't been able to adjust to this very unprecedented NFL season.
So would you say then that even with how great Belichick has been, that he's finally, I guess, met his match as a coach? Like there's just been too much to overcome, especially with the unique circumstances that we've seen in 2020? Or was this bound to happen at some point, no matter who you are?
Everyone's got to fall off the cliff at some point. Doesn't matter who you are, you're going to take a nosedive at some point. I don't think Bill's taken that nosedive yet. Again, this is something he had never encountered. This is something no NFL coach had encountered before. So it's something that he had to figure out and work around, especially with his quarterback coming down with COVID. And yes, Cam was asymptomatic. And I sit there and say, okay, the first couple games he was back, I understand. But even after that, he did not look good. And even before that, the game against the Raiders in week 3, he did not look good. So it's something where he's had the same routine for the last 20 years. I don't have to worry about my offense. Let me focus on my defense. That's essentially been his routine. It's like, all right, we'll give Brady a couple targets. We'll throw in Randy Moss for a year, and we'll let him do whatever he wants to do. He said to really focus in on his defense. When you lose that great player of Tom Brady on that side of the football, and then you even lose some of your greater players on defense, like Adonta Hightower, who is very underrated when it comes to everything he's done in New England, especially in big games like the Super Bowls. There's a lot that has been put on him, and he's not done yet. I think it'll be interesting. Talk to me after 2021, because at that point, then I'll say, okay, if Bill can't win 8 games, then I think it's the start of the downturn for Bill Belichick. Because every year, even in the offseason, people were saying Bill's going to win 8 games with Brian Hoyer at quarterback. We now recant that statement because we realize Brian Hoyer can't throw in a football. But you look at it and say, even I'm sure, Richard, like you look at it and say, as a 49ers fan, there's no way Bill Belichick loses 8 games, right? There's no way a Bill Belichick coach team goes under 500. Like that's not a thing anyone would ever think to say, because we've seen him do it. Like you said, before we hopped on with Matt Castle, with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's not done yet. Talk to me after next year, and we'll figure it out. But I don't think he's done yet.
Well, maybe not coaching, but last question on the Belichick topic. Do you think he's done in New England? Like, do you think he'll pull a Brady, Manning kind of Gruden thing and pick his next destination? Or will he always be that guy for the Patriots and that's will be his last sideline he coaches on?
I mean, I can't see him leaving New England. I think he's a one-team coach. And if he decides to leave New England, they don't re-up his contract or whatever, or he just leaves, There's not a single NFL head coach that has their job safe if Bill Belichick is on the market. I don't care who you are. You could have just signed a 10-year extension. Your job is not safe if Bill Belichick is the coach on the market. And look, if he still wants to coach and he leaves New England, someone will scoop him up in a week. Like, there's no doubt in my mind someone is going to want Bill Belichick. I don't think he leaves. If he does, I mean, it'd have to be the perfect situation. And I just, for the foreseeable future, I cannot see a situation arising where Bill would want to leave because, I mean, unless it's in division and he wants to, beat the Patriots to say he's beaten every NFL team or something like that more than once. I don't really know, but I don't see it happening, honestly. I think he's going to stay with one team his entire career.
Fair enough. Well, the next topic then from New England to San Francisco is Garoppolo. Obviously, Shanahan, like Belichick, can only do so much, riddled with injuries. And somebody made a comment on a tweet about the 49ers injuries, and some guy said, yeah, try being an Eagles fan. And I had to laugh
That's fair.
really hard because they'll probably win that trash division known as the East, and we're actually going to talk playoffs here in a little bit. And they beat the 49ers, so it's like, yeah, let's trade spots this season because I'll be more than happy to be on your side right now. But there's some decisions that need to be made. Garoppolo, I guess, took them to the Super Bowl, if you want to look at it like an offensive-driven league, like we all do. We love quarterbacks. We love our guys, our good-looking GQ cover model guys at quarterback. And the defense, though, was seriously the backbone of that whole season. And,
Correct.
You really hard to argue. And we've seen that before, even with Jim Harbaugh and the 49ers. But the quarterback position, though, becoming more and more valuable by the year. In fact, I think Dan Patrick said yesterday on his show that he doesn't think that there will ever be another non-quarterback MVP anymore. Like, it's just the race is too far in that direction. So, if you're Lynch and Shanahan, what are you thinking in regards to Jimmy Garoppolo, who is one of those quarterbacks that, kind of like Cam Newton, with a different skill set, when they're great, they are great. But are they going to be great today, or are they just going to be okay today? And then next week, are they going to be great, or are they just going to be okay?
Get rid of him. That's very, very simple. The 3 words, or 4 words, I guess, get rid of him. In the playoffs, not counting the Super Bowl, leading up to the Super Bowl, he had 27 pass attempts, 8 in the NFC Championship. 8. Jimmy Garoppolo did not take that team to the Super Bowl. Raheem Mostert carried that team to the Super Bowl. It wasn't there wasn't even a competition. Raheem Mostert picked up the entire city of San Francisco and dragged them to Miami. That's what he did. So, and look, in the playoffs, right? 63% completion percentage, not good. 427 passing yards, 219 of them coming in the Super Bowl. He had to throw. 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions in the Super Bowl, 2 touchdowns to 3 interceptions overall. The guy's not good. Like, he's not good, right? His short passing game, okay. He cannot throw an out route to save his life. He doesn't understand how to drive through his front leg and push off his back leg to actually get power behind his ball. He shies away from deep balls as well. His accuracy is just not good on the deep ball, as clearly shown by him missing a wide open Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl. I was there in person, opposite end, and I'm like, wide open, 5 steps, no one was near him. So when you put the ball in his hands to win a game, he's not going to win. And there's game managers out there where if you put the ball in their hands, you think they have a shot, right? Alex Smith before his injury. Alex Smith's a game manager, but if you put the ball in his hands in the 4th quarter, you would be like, okay, we have a shot. Kirk Cousins, as long as it's not in prime time, you potentially have a shot. But you look at guys like Andy Dalton, prime game manager. Jimmy Garoppolo, prime game manager. Would you trust them with the ball 2 minutes left, 4th quarter, down 6? No, you wouldn't, because you know something's going to go wrong, or they're just simply not going to complete a pass. Like, it's not even they'll throw an interception. They just actually won't complete a meaningful pass down the field. I think Nick Mullins can do the exact same thing as Jimmy Garoppolo. His awareness isn't as good. His pocket presence isn't as good. But when it comes to mobility, arm strength, reading a defense, Nick Mullins is Jimmy Garoppolo. There is no difference. It's the same thing. And two, yes, Jimmy signed the contract extension. His dead cap in 2021 is $2.8 million. That's nothing. It's like, would you rather pay him 27 million or cut him and only cost you 3? That's a no-brainer. They're going to cut or try and trade Jimmy Garoppolo next year. No doubt in my mind.
I could see that, and I know that Shanahan is a loyalty guy. I mean, you see his Falcons pop up on the 49ers roster all the time. He's just got such a bleeding heart for his crew, and I get it. I really do. Somebody said, well, they could go and get Matt Ryan. For what? For a season? And it's going to be more so the same thing, just game managing and the occasional deep ball to what? Who's their number one wide receiver that year? Is it Ayuk still? What are we expecting from him when he's not the only target? Is it Deebo Samuel if he's healthy? So there's a lot of question marks, but I look around the league. I don't want to tank for Trevor. I think that's foolish at this point with how much you've built and Shanahan's system and how we know that is effective when it works right. But I mean, Mariota, he's back up to Derek Carr, but clearly he's a capable quarterback. I'm looking for a Tannehill, a guy that had his chance on a team, but they didn't really give him much to work with. And now you're taking the stress off his shoulders, but yet he can still rise to the occasion when called upon. Do you see a quarterback on anyone's roster right now that fits that description?
Mariota is an interesting name because Shanahan's scheme is power run, and Mariota more so excels in a pistol formation. So, there's some of that in the 49ers playbook, but Shanahan likes 7 yards back, single back, bring in the tight ends. Let's just run over people. That's the main part of a Shanahan-driven offense. So Mariota may be a decent fit there. He can definitely take off and run if the pocket collapses. I think that's a great attribute for Marcus Mariota. Thinking of backups, honestly, I'm not sure of guys coming off expiring contracts. I really can't think of any. I truly think that Nick Mullins is set up in a really great situation. Look, he's not a world beater by any means. But you look at guys around the league, Lamar Jackson's looked terrible this year. He has not looked like a good quarterback. So their run game has been great. Yes, Lamar is versatile, but their defense has carried a lot of what Baltimore has been doing. Ben Roethlisberger hasn't looked high quality this entire year. Their defense has been carrying them. Their run game has been carrying them. There's teams that get carried by their run game and their defense. The Patriots have Cam Newton has 2 passing touchdowns on the season. The team has 4. Cam Newton doesn't even have half of his team's passing touchdowns. Like teams will run the football now, and you're seeing that shift, especially this year, I think, just because of the non-expanded playbook. It's a lot smaller this year due to COVID. I really don't. Mariota's probably the best name out there. I'm trying to think of quarterbacks, that are coming off of, this is the final year of their contract. If Dak doesn't re-sign in Dallas, maybe he can go to San Francisco. I think that would be a solid fit. Dak's a great quarterback anywhere, in my opinion. He's a fantastic leader. So I would say if they don't re-sign Dak, I think San Francisco should go all out to try and sign him. But when you look at it, San Francisco right now only has $21 million in cap space heading into 2021. And the cap's shrinking $23 million, which is why instead of the 44 or 45 they would have had, it's only down to 21. That's not enough to sign Dak Prescott. So they have to make some moves in that instance to get really what they call fancy with the cap to see if they could sign him. But you could sign Marcus Mariota to a 2-year, $10 million a year contract, 2 years, $20 million. And I think you'd get the same, if not better, production out of Mariota than you would Garoppolo. So it's I would be shocked if they keep him on the team, because you're not going to pay a guy of his skill $27 million to hand the football off 37 times a game. It's just, that's not, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that.
No, and my biggest concern as a Niners fan is the future right now beyond the team. This is not the NFC East. A team with 5 wins is not going to win this division. Now, this could be a fluke year, absolutely, and next year Dallas could rattle off 11 and be just fine, sitting pretty, or Philadelphia or New York, whatever. But you have the Rams twice a year with one of the nastiest, if not the nastiest, defensive fronts with just pretty much Aaron Donald, and then you've got Jalen Ramsey in the secondary, who locked down DK Metcalf last week against Seattle.
Okay. All right, that is blown out of proportion. He did not follow DK Metcalf. There were plenty of time. And also, LA loves playing zone. I don't know. Jalen Ramsey is so overrated. He has been burned so many times this season. He got called for there was a BSPI call on Michael Gallup after Ramsey absolutely burned him in week 1. Metcalf smoked him on 2 deep routes that Russ just missed. Ramsey is overrated. Facts. Carry on with your conversation.
Okay,
I think Jalen Ramsey's overrated.
Fair enough, but they still have Russell Wilson, who carries that entire team just like Mostert did, last year in that run. And then apparently the Cardinals now are a pretty big deal. And who would have seen that coming? I think it will be so ironic if somehow Kyler Murray manages to win the MVP by doing the same thing that Russell Wilson has done for his team his entire career. Because that's what it is right now. That you're seeing Russell Wilson 2.0 with Kyler Murray, and he just happens to have DeAndre Hopkins, and Russell Wilson has had that one hot receiver every year. So I'm looking to the future. I don't think it's in a rookie quarterback. I think that Mariota, against some nasty defensive fronts like the West has, with his ability to improvise on his feet, may not be Shanahan's scheme or his plan, but I think is something that you kind of need to have in your back pocket for a rainy day, especially if that rainy day happens to come, 5 different times throughout the season, or, for the different divisional matchups. But that's also dependent on what the rest of the schedule is. This year's schedule has not been easy, with trips to New England and then playing the Green Bay Packers. But teams that are all about, or I guess I should say fans that are all about tanking for Trevor Lawrence. I made a post a couple of weeks ago about the current number 1 and number 2. I think I even did the top 5 quarterbacks taken within the top 5 over the last 10 years, not counting Murray, because I don't think there's a large enough sample size there. And of course, Burrow, this is his first year. But you look around, I mentioned Mariota. Okay, he's a backup. Winston, also a backup. Wentz is constantly hurt, and Foles had to win the Super Bowl for them. Goff has been to the Super Bowl and lost, but what? I don't understand why people think that putting so much into a quarterback number 1 overall is going to magically fix all your problems when you're probably the number 1 or number 2 pick without making trades to move up for a reason. The Jets did this with Sam Darnold. The Browns did this year after year after year until they got Baker Mayfield. What makes you think that you're going to be that team that gets a guy whose last name isn't Manning, since that's the only number 1 overall pick for both Eli and Peyton that's ever proved to be the opposite of that, the exception to the rule?
So I think you look at these guys like Jared Goff came from where did he play? He played Cal?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right on that? He came from Cal? Yeah. I forget, honestly, if he came from Cal. Yeah, he came from Cal. Josh Rosen came from UCLA. That's why I was getting the 2 mix. Cal, Aaron Rodgers came from Cal, so that helped. But it's Cal's not a dominant college football school. There was a couple other guys you had named in there. Not Murray, not Burrow. I'm just trying to think of the Wentz. North Dakota State University. Are you kidding me? What? And there's supposedly a kid this year. I'm looking at the draft prospects now. Yeah, Trey Lance. This is supposedly the 3rd ranked quarterback coming into the draft this year. North Dakota State University. It's okay, Great. If I am one, if you have the skill, I believe you can play in the NFL. I think if you have the skill, you have the drive, you can definitely find a spot on a roster and be productive in the NFL. I think out of all of these guys, when you name all these previous guys, Murray has a good chance of being good. I don't still think Kyler Murray does not win a Super Bowl just strictly because of his height. I think he's very limited. I don't think he wins a Super Bowl, but I think he's going to be a great quarterback for a long time. Joe Burrow has very good potential of winning the Super Bowl. He already looks great in his rookie season. We'll see how that carries over the next couple of years and really make a firm assessment. But you brought up Sam Darnold was a third overall pick. Honestly, if Adam Gase leaves, the Jets probably win 6 games. That's no exaggeration.
I know.
That's no exaggeration. The Adam Gase is that bad. So if Trevor Lawrence needs to stay at Clemson, that or pull an Eli and say, I am not playing for the Chargers, trade me. Because Lawrence cannot play under Adam Gase. He cannot. His career will be ruined under Adam Gase. Because Sam Darnold is not a bad quarterback. And I'm not a Ryan Tannehill believer by any means, but we've seen it. Ryan Tannehill leaves, Adam Gase goes off. It's like Devontae Parker, the year after Adam Gase leaves, goes off. Kenyon Drake leaves the Dolphins, rips it up the second half of last year with Arizona. It's like these guys we know are good. Leave Adam Gase and kill it. Adam Gase is not a good NFL head coach, could arguably be one of the most overrated coaches in all of sports for eternity. That's not even just in sports now, throughout history. He's so overrated. He's the quarterback whisperer. Guy can't figure out how to get a quarterback to stay healthy on the field, and Sam Darnold, who's a top 3 pick. I don't think Lawrence is a sure bet by any means. Go get Deshaun Watson, who came out of Clemson. He's looked solid. Clemson knows how to make NFL caliber players. From every position, they make NFL caliber players. I think out of all of the quarterbacks, I think Lawrence is by far the most NFL ready, the best bet. I'm not sold on Justin Fields. Obviously, Trey Lance coming from North Dakota State, and then you're looking at Kyle Trask, all these different guys that are probably going to be second round, third round picks at best. Lawrence is going to go number 1 overall. I don't think there's anybody that's going to take that spot from him this year. I don't know. I really don't know, because we've seen guys that have been touted as the next greatest thing to come into the NFL. Ryan Leaf, Jamarcus Russell, just 2 at the quarterback position right there in recent memory in the last, 20, 25 years.
Oh, RG3 was another one that was on my list, and I don't know if he just got too beat up at Washington or
he got smacked around,
but I mean, that was a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. Andrew Luck's career, I feel, would have been a lot better had they kept him upright longer, but
it's funny, he leaves and then the Colts have the best offensive line in the NFL compared to the last 6 years where they were the worst offensive line in the NFL. It's funny how that works out. But yeah, no, you're right. If Andrew Luck is the last quarterback to come out of college that was a sure bet that people thought of and was actually proving that on the field. Like, Luck was a sure thing as a quarterback. He had no offensive line.
Yeah, if you're Trevor Lawrence and you're looking at the Jets situation right now, which I had Gase getting fired before Dan Quinn, I mean,
Dude, I want the job security of Adam Gase. I want to be so bad at my job that I just get to keep it. I want to be so bad at my job that I can just keep it.
Like, I feel like he would get fired if he won a game. Like, that's where they're at right now. Like, if you win a game, you're fired. Like, it's plain and simple. Like, you need to keep doing what you're doing. You do you, Adam Gase.
No, you're not wrong. Honestly, he's so bad.
Well, what happens if Trevor stays? Like, you say that you want him to, unless he can, schmooze like Eli could, or whine, whichever way you want to take that. But if he stays, who did we see that happen with most recently? Was it Falk from WSU? I feel like that's the name that comes to mind as far as they were projected very high, but then decided to stay. But it wasn't Falk. It was the quarterback before him, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me. But he's been a backup for, I think, the Eagles and a few other teams, but his draft stock plummeted because he decided to stay another year.
Yeah,
So,
Luke Falk. Yep.
yeah, but if you're Lawrence, is that even possible? Like, can your draft stock plummet because you're Trevor Lawrence, no matter how bad of a season you may have?
Man, it would be really hard, in my opinion, for his stock to plummet that badly, considering it's the quarterback position. So, like the last guy, Andrew Luck, stayed his senior year. People thought he was going to come out his junior year. He stayed his senior year, wanted to finish out his career, finish out his education at Stanford. People are like, this is going to be bad for him. He shouldn't do this. He showed his last year at Stanford. He was still a viable number one pick, didn't get injured, went into the NFL just fine. Biggest issue with Lawrence is, staying healthy. Let's make sure that he can stay healthy, stay on the field, because that's the biggest concern going back for another year is, yes, your draft stock can plummet, but also stay healthy. Like your draft stock can plummet off bad play, but it could immediately plummet off injury. Like Tua got injured, and yes, he didn't stay for his senior year, but Tua got injured. He was probably going to be the number one overall pick if he stayed healthy, but that went to Joe Burrow. So that's a very recent case of, draft stock. He didn't fall obviously a lot, but he fell to a point where he wasn't the number one overall pick, didn't make the most amount of money he possibly could. I just, in some people say, well, Trevor Lawrence won't be able to make money. Nope. The NIL bills, and he'll be able to make money off his likeness next year as a college athlete. And he'll be able to make a lot of money off his likeness because he is Trevor Lawrence. So he should still be able to make money while he's in Clemson. And hell, if he wants to play 6 games and just coast the rest of the season and sit out, dude, by all means, do it. Like, I don't play for the Jets. It's very simple. You do not want to play for the Jets if Adam Gase is the head coach. And look, if Lawrence declares for the draft and the Jets are sitting at 1, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, you're going to the Jets, right? You're going there. If I'm Trevor Lawrence, I call up whoever the GM of the Jets is and say, look, fire Adam Gase or I'm not playing for your team. It's that simple. Fire Adam Gase or I'm not playing for your team. At that point, you fire Adam Gase. It's no question. So, but obviously I don't know if Trevor Lawrence has that power, but I hope, I don't know. If the Jets they're going to get the first pick and they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence and his career is going to suck. That's what's going to happen. Let's end the conversation. I could talk about Adam Gase being terrible for a long time.
So it wasn't. I just did a quick Google search. Luke Falk was the most recent WSU quarterback and one of the most recent ones whose draft stock plummeted. But the one that I was thinking of was actually Matt Barkley, who was another USC quarterback. Who, remember, we all waited at the edge of our seats for that decision, and then he stayed, and then nobody even mentioned him the next season. And that's a USC, So that's why I worry about the Trevor Lawrence decision. But I do think it would take a lot for Clemson to be that terrible, or for even him to have that bad of a season statistically to lose that kind of stock. But it has happened. I knew there was a name I was forgetting, and Matt Barkley is probably the prime example right now in recent memory.
Yeah, back when Barkley was playing college football, the Pac-12 wasn't necessarily a joke conference. Mm-hmm. Oregon was still great. I don't know all the Pac-12 teams off the top of my head. I'm not a big college football fan, but I know college football enough to say that the ACC is the worst college football conference by far. Not even close. It's bar none. It is Clemson. Everyone's high on UNC. Okay, that's fine. Great. UNC. Mitchell Trubisky went there. Not going to give UNC any credit on the football field. Also, Daniel Jones went to Duke. No credit on the football field for anyone outside of Clemson. So he's, especially this season, the only team that he would have had to face if he wasn't on the COVID list was Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame's a fraud team regardless. They can't play in the lights. But Clemson plays jokes. They play literal jokes of college football teams. So he doesn't have to worry. There's no way his draft stock plummets. His draft stock's not going to plummet because he plays Wake Forest. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
All right. On that note, we are once again talking with Joe Zollo, Full Sail alumni, and one of my favorite to talk to about sports. We're talking NFL, all things, and we're going to take this thing home with our playoff push. The playoff structure is different this year, but not in the way that I think anybody really wanted. You get 7 teams instead of 6. One will have a bye, one for each conference, the number 1 seed, and then you have now another wild card in the mix. But it didn't fix the problem, and what a perfect year to point that out, as some team from the NFC East will represent that division with a home game in the 2020 postseason. I mean, what did you think when you first saw the change? And I mean, were you excited, or were you like, "Well, that's great, but it doesn't change what we needed to change"?
Let me just list some teams here. The Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, the Detroit Lions, the San Francisco 49ers, the Atlanta Falcons, the New York, not going to count the Giants, they're in that division, the Carolina Panthers. Every other team not in the NFC East would make the playoffs currently if it was not based off of winning your division. Now, granted, look, I think, yes, each division winner should get a playoff spot, right? You play the teams in your division 6 times per year. That is almost half of your games. If you beat your division, you at least deserve a spot. The Eagles shouldn't be the 4 seed. They should be the 7 seed going on the road to play New Orleans to get spanked. That is what it should be. Is, yes, if you win your division, you should make the playoffs. You should not automatically get a home game. Like, you look at the other teams, right? Pittsburgh deserve a home game. Kansas City, Buffalo, Indianapolis, Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona. I don't think anyone's going to argue that any of those teams don't deserve a home game, right? They've all been great, fun to watch teams. Then you get to the Philadelphia Eagles, and you're like, that's absurd. That's just ridiculous. Why are they even in this conversation? Because right now, according to this, Philly would play Tampa Bay. I would bet my 401k that Tampa Bay spanks them in the playoffs. No, there could be no Tom Brady. No, they could have an entire squad of backups, and they would still beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, they are that bad. So, man, God, this playoff structure. I was not a fan of adding another team because I thought, like baseball too, up until this year, baseball, each division winner in each conference, 3 division winners, 2 wild cards, they play 1 game to get that wild card spot. Out of 30 teams, the best in baseball make the playoffs every year. This year, different story. The NFL, you had 12 teams make the playoffs each year. Those 12 of 32. The best teams in the NFL generally make the playoffs. Yes, the 6 seed is the one that gets beat up on. We understand. That's everything. The 8 seed's the one that gets beat up on in the NBA. It's the same thing. Look at the NBA and the NHL. Over half of the league makes the playoffs. That's no fun. So you're telling me a team below 500 is going to make the playoffs? Like, that's ridiculous. And yes, I'm saying this. The division winner. Yes, whoever wins the NFC East is going to have 6 wins. I understand that I'm contradicting myself in that standpoint. But in basketball, it's a different story. Yes, your division, same thing. They don't do divisions. They just do conferences. Same thing with hockey. They just do conferences. So, and from that standpoint, man, it's going to piss me off that the Eagles are going to make the playoffs because realistically, if Dak Prescott doesn't get hurt, the Cowboys probably make the playoffs, right? As bad as their team. I mean, as bad as all they have to do was win 6 games. You sit there and say their offense should win 6 games, right? Oh my God. Every other team currently in the playoff picture for the NFC has 6 wins.
Here's my whole problem with it, and I've been beating this drum for a while. I see the comments whenever people post their unhappiness about the way that the playoffs are. Anytime somebody points out the Philadelphia Eagles, or I think it's been the Giants a couple of times at 8-8, and yeah, they made Super Bowl runs, but you have to ask yourself, did that team really deserve to be in that position anyway to make a run? Probably not. So people say, well, you have to have divisions. It's just the way that the game is. Yeah, but we also had the extra point from 20 yards out. They pushed that back. They changed the rules for kickoff, where if it goes through the end zone, it's at the 25 instead of, like, the game changes. Just because it is a certain way now doesn't mean it won't be next year. The Dolphins are the only undefeated team their whole season, including the Super Bowl, 16-0, and the Patriots went 16-0 regular season undefeated. So, like, the game changes. You can't just say that this is how it is and that's the way that it's going to be, because when it was 5 teams to a division before the expansion, that's when I understand your divisional schedule meant a lot, because now you're talking 10 games. That's over, half your schedule. It matters who wins their division. But the whole point of playing 16 games is to win more than you lose. Otherwise, you might as well shorten the season down to 6 games and just play your divisional opponents and call it good. I mean, that's kind of NBA bubble-esque, but if you're going to play the division card and the scheduling thing, you can still have divisions for scheduling purposes, but to award a playoff spot and a home game just because you win that crappy division and you lose more than you win is just unfair. And people that say, well, we wouldn't have gotten the Marshawn Lynch beast run in Seattle against the Saints. Okay, but did they win the Super Bowl that year? No, because great runs don't win the Super Bowl in the divisional round of the playoffs or the wild card round, whatever it was. Like, you got to look big picture here for this.
The scheduling with divisions and stuff like that. Those unaware, you play 6 games in your division. You play 4 games in an assigned division within the AFC, assigned division within the NFC. It rotates every 4 years, so you see that team every 4 years. And then your other 2 games are the same seed that you finished in your division in the 2 other divisions in your conference. It's very confusing what I just said, but I promise you it makes sense. One of those games will be at home. One of them will be on the road. It normally alternates. So I think at that point, right, you look at it, say, get rid of divisions. Okay, if they have to play every team in their conference, that's 15 games, and then they only have 1 for the other conference. So I think you need divisions at this point, because I haven't sat down and thought, like, how would this work? I think you need divisions at this point just for the sake of scheduling.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be the division winner is automatically given a home playoff spot. I think what could be an interesting little factor into the mix is a division winner makes the playoffs no matter what, right? So if the Eagles finished 6, 9-1, they would make the playoffs, but they would make it as the 7 seed. They wouldn't make it as the 4 seed. So, but if the Eagles finished 9-7, despite someone in the wild card maybe having a better record, they get a home playoff game because they finished above 500. I think if you're a division winner that finishes above 500, you should get a home playoff game. But if you finish 500 or below, you should be relegated to the wild card spot. And then whoever would be the top wild card would essentially take your home playoff game as the 4 seed. Yeah. I think that would be interesting. It's definitely something they would never do. That's not going to happen. Roger Goodell and the owners would never go for it. I just think it'd be an interesting little thing if they did decide to do it. And if it happens, you heard it here first that it did happen, and I said it, and Richard is my witness. So
yes. I could see 8 teams before long in a true bracket style. I don't know what relevance the divisions would have at that point, or if they would just take the conference and say the top 8 from each, and do it like that. Would they reseed with each round? I don't know, because the NFL is the only, playoff structure that does that. But I think there's a lot of things in discussion, and you're going to hear it even louder this year, and people will want to play the COVID card and injuries and whatnot, but it's like, this is not the first time that we have witnessed a team struggling to get to 500, and yet their division is going to be won by somebody with either a 50-50 record or below. And it's just time to address that problem, because you have these guys that put their bodies on the line for 16 games in the regular season, with the goal being, okay, win more than you lose. And when you award teams that lose more than they win, and there's a team out there, like probably in the NFC West, that has above 500 that's watching the playoffs from home, while this team that lost, 70% of its games is hosting a playoff game, like that's a problem. That's like, how do you, in a reward system like the NFL, you win more of your games, you get home games, a higher seed, your path to the Super Bowl is easier, everybody's happy, you're making money, whatever. That's not the case with this. So the reward system needs to make sense, and I think they'll probably end up addressing some issues after this year, especially if the Eagles do not finish 500 or better. Like I think you're right. 5 or 6 wins is going to be what gets it done.
The Giants, football team, and Cowboys need to only lose one game the rest of the season to be at 500. They need to go undefeated to be over 500. Keep in mind, they still play each other. All of these teams still play each other. So it is impossible for that to happen.
Right. Well, Joe, I appreciate your time and your input and the laughs. It's been very entertaining. We unpacked a lot, and there's even more to unpack as we make that final push for the postseason, whoever the participants are going to be. But I thank you so much for your time. Hope you got the most out of the career fair, and you're on to greener pastures sooner than later. But hey, 2020 is almost done. It's got one more month left in it, so I wouldn't, uncork the champagne just yet. But, we're getting there. So hopefully 2021 is the year that we can say everything that we said for 2020 and just apply it to a year later.
I think we had to go into 2021 thinking it's going to be a terrible year because everyone was going to the 2020 new decade. This is going to be great. Nope. So we got to reverse that. We got to reverse it. Say, wow, this is going to suck. Like, we don't celebrate New Year's Day. We don't do anything. We sit at home, twiddle our thumbs, and do nothing in darkness. And then good will come the next 364 days. I think that's what we have to do.
All right, Joe, other than on Twitter, which is always a fun follow at Joe Zollo, where can people find you? What do you got going on lately?
So Twitter is at Joe_Zollo. Fantasy football, that is my podcast, what I normally do over at Club Fantasy. We go live Wednesdays at 7 o'clock Eastern. Twitter, Periscope, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. It's at Club Fantasy FFL. If you just search that anywhere, that's where you're going to find it. We have awesome guests every single week. Love to have an awesome time. Myself, my 2 other co-hosts, and the guests we normally bring on every single week. And then on Saturdays, we do our live start-sit show as well. So any start-sit questions, 11 a.m. Eastern, all the same spots I just listed. A lot of fun. I have helped a lot of people win some fantasy football games this year, and I'm very proud of that. So,
well, there you go. There's not much more of a selling point you need than if you are in your fantasy league playoff picture. Joe is clearly your guy to help you secure playoff wins and maybe even a championship to your resume. So, Joe, thank you so much. He is Full Sail alum, and he's Fan Show family. I thank you so much for your time, man. You take care of yourself and have a good night.
Appreciate it, Richard. Same to you, buddy.
Do you remember the time that Mark Sanchez ran into his own player's butt? That was funny sports.
Thank you for having me on the show, man. I love the Fan Show.